Hi guys, it's Blackie and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a quick class on sharpening your bushcraft knife and how to get it up to a usable level. Now, what we're talking about right now is we're talking about a belt knife. It can be any kind of knife, but I'm going to focus specifically on a belt knife. Okay? So, the thickness that the stock of the blade is made will make a difference in sharpening. The taper and the bevel make a difference in sharpening. The actual edge makes a difference in sharpening. Okay, let me explain that. On an edge, you have the actual thickness of the blade. Then it tapers down, and then it tapers again to the actual edge. So there's the actual edge, there's the edge bevel, there is the, we will call it for this, the taper, and then the actual stock of the knife. How fast that transitions means how well you can lay the knife down onto a stone to sharpen it. Okay. If this bottom actual edge bevel is very short and narrow, then you've got to have the knife way up high in order to meet that bevel. If it's a taper like a Scandi, then you can lay much more of the knife down. It makes a difference. Some knives are what's called hollow ground. That means they use spinning wheels and they drag the blade between it and it puts an edge on it. So you have to look at your knife and understand what you're looking at. So for example, on this WC Knives Gray Man, excellent knife by the way. Notice that here, back here is the stock. Then there's this long taper and then the actual edge right there. Okay, it almost blends together between the taper and that edge. Now there's official terminology I'm not going to use in the moment, because I know somebody's screaming at screaming at the screen right now going, Blackie, that's called a secondary bevel. And yeah, I know, but I'm talking to just the general public that wants to learn how to sharpen a knife, not to become an aficionado of technology and terminology. We're going to use plain simple English. Okay, so I acknowledge I'm not using the technically correct term, but I'm using a term you can understand. Okay, because of this wide bevel, that means that whenever I lay the knife down onto the stone and lift it up to make that edge fit correctly, it's not much of a deal. If this was very thick and this edge, this wide bevel right here was much shorter, that means the knife's got to be lifted way up high to make it fit. Okay, now let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, for this demonstration, I'm going to be using this Work Sharp is the name of it. It is made and sold at, I've seen it at Walmart. Okay, this is where I got mine. It has two diamond hones, one fine, one coarse, a leather strop, and a ceramic bar, as well as another small ceramic bar right there. One of the reasons I like it so much is these are only held on by a magnet. You can pull that thin piece of diamond out to use it freestanding, and it's also got wrenches in there for taking off a bow and arrow broadheads, but you can take it off and lay it down. These bevels right here are 20-degree guides, okay, so that you can use that as a starting point to drag your knife. Okay, for those of you that have little or no experience in this, let's discuss how to understand what we're doing. We're going to take a knife blade, and you notice this one is nice and wide, but that edge bevel isn't so much of a bevel there, is there? Okay, you lay the blade up there flat onto the steel like that, and when you look, there'll be a little bit of like a shadow right there where the edge is not touching the stone. You tip up until that shadow disappears, and your knife edge is actually on the stone. Now it would be beautiful if it was like this 20 degrees, and this one is close to 20 degrees. So what I'm going to do is, making sure my fingers are out of the way, put it up here on this and let it just rest against that, put it on that, and then maintaining that, I'm going to draw toward me, see, like that. Put it up there, make sure that it's up against that and that there is no shadow right there. The edge is touching the stone. Not just the blade, the edge. Okay? And I'm going to bear down with a little bit of pressure. On a scale of 1 to 10, say a 3 or 4. Okay? And then I'm going to draw the knife. As I do, it's like I'm trying to slice a thin sliver of that stone off. Imagine that's a block of cheese. And I'm going to lay that knife up there, and I'm going to try to make sure that edge goes away, and I'm going to pull it in a long, thin, try to slice a thin sliver off of it. That's the operation. Then I'm going to swap sides, and I'm going to go back the opposite way, the same way. Now, I want to be even the number of strokes on each side. You can alternate 1 and 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and go to 10. See? So I do 1 coming this way, reverse. I only count the 1 coming this way. So if I was using this right now to sharpen, I would go 1. Line it back up. 2. 3. And do 10 strokes like that. Now you want to check the blade itself. Put your thumb from the back side and push away from you. You should not feel terribly sharp that way. Never slide your finger up and down the actual edge. You'll see a lot of people, I took it and I did that with my fingernail. Yeah. See a lot of people with sore fingers too. The way you want to do it is you want to take your thumb and push away from you. If there is a wire edge. Now what is a wire edge? In a nutshell, a wire edge is where you've got the 2 bevels of the metal up there. And in your strokes, one side has done that and got a little bit too much taken off this side, and it makes that edge want to do that. That's what's called rolling the edge. The edge is not perfectly balanced. It's rolled to one side now because you've taken off more metal on this side than this, and it will roll. What will feel when you run your thumb across the back side is this side will feel real smooth like a butter knife, and this side will feel kind of sharp. That's where that edge is rolled over and your fingernails dragging on it. Okay? So what you want to do there is you want it even. So if I feel it more on this side than this, that side I want to take 1 or 2 more strokes off of to even it up. See, I know that sounds counterintuitive. If you took off too much on this side, Blackie, then go this side. I'm going to do that. But what I'm going to do is this. This side of the blade has that burr. I can feel it. This side does not. So what I want to do is I want to get it up there and I want to put that burr down, bear down on it, and do 1 long pull and see if I can eliminate. I actually roll it out of the way. See? Now I feel. Does it feel smooth from both sides? Yes. Okay. Now don't ever bear down and slide, but you can pull directly against the edge. So it kind of, it's like, remember you're slicing cheese? You're slicing straight up on the skin very gently. You don't want it to grab. Don't pull fast. Just put it up there and gently pull. It should feel a little bit of a drag, like teeth trying to grab onto you. That's what you want. Now, take a piece of paper or something and pull through it. Does it cut cleanly or does it kind of jagged? Jagged means there's waves in the edge. That's the reason when you get up here to sharpen it, you want to go full length. You put the knife up there and rest it. Make sure that shadow's gone so you've lifted up the back at the proper side. And I hope you can see this. If I lay the blade up there just flat, so there's a little bit of a shadow. Tip down, it goes away. That tells me the edge is in contact. Now, let's take the Bushcraft knife. Same idea, we're just getting bigger. Okay? You're going to lay it up there, tip it up until that shadow disappears and you're fully in contact. And then you're going to pull the full length of that blade to the tip. What if my thing's too short, Blackie? Alright, start up here, pull, and wherever you get, pick up, go back, and continue until you get all the way. Flip, and go back. 10 strokes. Now, I've got to where it feels fairly smooth, feels fairly sharp, and I can cut paper fairly cleanly. How sharp do I need it? We want bragging rights. You know, Blackie, I want that thing sharp. Now, I want it sharp. Sharp is weak. Alright? I'm going to scale it up because I want you to see this. This would be a very sharp blade. This would be a very dull blade. Okay? But, right here at the tip, it's so much thinner, and metal, steel is more elastic than rubber. I won't give you the dissertation on that, but it is a fact. And so steel bends. Depending on what kind of steel that your knife is made out of, whether it's some of the new ultra hard voodoo steel that holds an edge fantastic, or something older like 012 steel. When you bear down to cut something, if you have a thin edge, it can bend. Because, and I bared down and I went through that and I took that gnarly piece of oak and I put my knife up there and I shaved it off and everything. You may bend the edge, actually bend that very thin edge. It's very sharp, but it doesn't have a lot of meat on it for strength. See? We all know that scalpels and razor blades are the sharpest thing around, right? Why don't we carry them as a Bushcraft knife? Because they bend and dull very, very easily. That's the reason. A super thin knife. I'm not saying you can't have a very sharp knife, but what is the job you're doing with it? And for most Bushcraft, Woodscraft type duties, I do not recommend a razor edge knife because it's too fragile. It looks great when you're sitting there taking that piece of white cedar and running those 18-inch long curls to make a feather stick. Looks great. Give you that. Yeah, perfect. But most of the time you don't have that wood and you got to pick up what's on the ground and you're trying to carve a tent stake out of a gnarly piece of oak. And you got to bear down and get them knots out of the way and stuff like that. And a super thin, super sharp is easily damaged. So I want a little bit more of a robust edge. How robust? I want it to cut paper cleanly. I don't want the edge too thick or too thin. Okay? Too thin is a razor. It's fully tapered, it's just too thin. Think box cutter blade. Too dull, think like a chisel. Okay? And on, like I mentioned earlier, some of those knives that are hollow ground, you will have right here on this thing, you'll come down, it comes down to point X, and then it will suddenly neck down to a point like that, where those wheels were spinning, cut circular out. This edge right here, what we call the shoulder, and so it'd be really sharp and you'll go to cut down and suddenly it just gets hard to cut. It's because this thickness of the blade, you're trying to push that thickness through. It's not cutting anymore now, it's a wedge. So up here shallow, man, it's sharp as all get out, but when you try to cut deep, it bogs down. It kind of like you've seen axes that stick in wood, and some of them stick and you can lift right out, and some of them stick so deep you got to beat it back out of the log. A cutting axe has got a thin edge. It wants to shear through as much wood as possible. A splitting axe is more blunt because it wants to hit and force those fibers out. Well, a knife does the same idea. So if most of my cuts are shallow cuts, or I'm cutting something soft relatively, a thinner, sharper knife works good. A shoulder of some kind, like a hollow ground or something like that, makes it kind of difficult in the long run to sharpen and keep it sharp in the field, because that little bitty edge is kind of weak. It's stronger, and if you're somebody that's going to baton a knife, I do not recommend batoning a knife, but you need something like a chisel then, because otherwise you're just going to roll and dull the edge. It's just not meant for it. Knives are too thin and too flexible, and when you go to beating on it, it's going to make that edge get a little wavy. It starts getting out of sync. It doesn't hold up well. So you got to have more of a robust edge to take it versus a thin razor sharp edge. Okay? Now, those of you that follow my channel will recognize this is a knife that started it all. Now notice these curves in this. This is the old Master Woodsman prototype knife that became the Blackbird and that became everything else. And these curves, a lot of people look at that and go, well, that'd be difficult to sharpen. And you may choose a Bushcraft blade that is not just a straight edge, but has some sort of thing in it. Here's the giveaway, though. When you lay it down on a flat surface, like to sharpen it, even though this looks wavy, it's not. It's actually the same angle all the way through, see? It just happens to have a wave in it. So you can lay it flat on a stone to sharpen it. Okay? So whatever knife you're picking out to utilize, if it has curves, be sure that you can lay it flat on a stone. If you've got something like a tracker knife, you can't, because it does have different edges and different angles. And so what you have to do then is you have to hold the knife, take the stone and stone sections of it for the different angles. Okay? Blackie, I've got a big enough stone. Can I hold my knife like that instead of trying to do that and do this? Yes, you can. But realize if you're freehanding it, you have to keep your angles the same. What that means is always approach it at the same angle. Don't do this, because you're going to round off that edge. It's the same angle over and over again. That's a very viable. Same thing with a file and an axe or machete or anything else. Get a certain angle where it fits to the bevel and go with it in nice long strokes. Okay? You've got your knife, and you have now done like I told you. Got a clean bevel, following whatever the bevel is of the knife, tip up until there is no shadow, made long strokes. You've done it evenly. You've done it 10 strokes. It's not as sharp as I want, Blackie. Do another 10. Do another 10. Okay? When it gets as sharp as you want, okay, now you polish it. Depending on what kind of steel you've got, okay, any kind of carbon steel has teeth to it. And let me explain that. Inside of the metal itself, there are carbon fibers. That's the reason we call it carbon steel. And if you looked at them under a microscope, they look like little curly cues. Okay? As you wear away metal on a stone, and that's what you're doing, you're sanding it, you're wearing it away. There at that edge, those curly cues, once they're exposed, they want to stick out a little bit. And so when you look at a carbon steel knife under a microscope, the edge actually looks like saw teeth as those fibers bend out of alignment, because they've been held in position by the metal around it. Well, that metal's gone, so they move out. And so it has teeth. In the past, we said that carbon steel knives cut better than stainless steel, because stainless steel is more homogeneous throughout. What that means in English is it doesn't have all those curly cues in there. And the way that they create it makes for steel that is more uniform, okay? So when you look at a stainless steel blade under a microscope, it is very smooth, and so it doesn't have those teeth sticking out. That's the reason people in the past said that stainless steel did not cut as well as carbon steel, especially when you added a lubricant like water. You go to cut a wet rope and the stainless steel knife would just slide back and forth, but the carbon steel knife would bite down and actually start cutting because of those saw teeth. Okay, that goes away whenever we added diamond stones, because the diamond stones actually put teeth onto anything you sharpen it with. So when you're dragging that stainless steel edge along there, it's actually leaving teeth, okay? Because it's cutting grooves, because the diamonds are actually cutting the steel. So when you look at stainless steel now under a microscope, after it's been sharpened on a diamond stone, you'll actually see teeth, okay? Now, those teeth, you've sharpened your knife. That's what the leather strop is for, or the ceramic strop is for, okay? You have sharpened the knife, it's good and sharp, it's cutting paper like you want, you feel confident with it. Now you're going to strop it. It doesn't have to be this, it can be a leather belt, it's just a piece of leather. You see how that's fuzzy like that? You're going to put it up over the edge, away from you, and pull back away from the edge like that. If you go in, it's just going to bite and cut in. So you pull backwards against the edge like this. Now what's that going to do is, remember those teeth I was talking about? It's going to polish those edges, and it's kind of like you ever had a cat that you got out of the bath where you gave him a bath, and they're all kinds of, the fur's all kind of tangled up, and you'd sit and brush them. Well, you're brushing it. Those fibers down there will line up better, and those little weak ones that are almost ready to break off, by stropping it, they'll snap on off and leaving that sharp edge. Because remember, as those curlicues lean out, those teeth, they get a little fragile too, and they want to snap. And so therefore, by doing this, you're polishing the edge, and you're therefore getting those little curlicues that are wanting to break off. And you'll see it as a darkness on here, almost like dark dust. And it's those microscopic little bitty fibers. Okay, how much do you do this? Just give it to, about a minute, 2 minutes, just do it, and that'll hone it up. Now, you've got a sharp knife now. In the field, Blackie, how much do I need to sharpen my Bushcraft knife? When you're doing a project or whatever, and you notice that it's getting harder to cut, okay? If I have the same kind of wood, and I did this, I'm doing 4 of these, and I cut the first tent stake, let's say, and I go to cut the second tent stake, and on the third tent stake, for lack of this argument, we'll say it's getting a little harder. All right, stop, pull out a hone. What is a hone? A diamond blade is a hone. This ceramic rod is a hone. This leather on a paddle is a strop. Okay, let me tell you what the difference is. A hone is a polishing tool, that it has just enough aggression so as those fibers are getting a little broke off and a little bit of dull, it'll sharpen them back up without removing a lot of metal. So you come up here to the ceramic bar, and you just once or twice, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice it's got the angles as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keeping that angle, okay? And you'll see that the edge actually gets shinier. You're polishing the edge, just like if you could take out super fine little sandpaper and just polish it up and add a little shine back to it. You notice how the dark streak is on the ceramic rod. Remember that dust-like fiber I'm talking about? Well, that's what happened. I just broke off any of those now that were sharp, and they've kind of got turned by being used. Those fibers are getting kind of turned, they're getting kind of dull, and I just wiggled them back and forth and snapped them off to a nice sharp edge again. And so I toned my edge up. Do I have to sharpen it? No, I hone it. If you sharpen a knife, and every time it starts to get dull, you just hit it for like a minute or two on a hone and bring it right back to sharpness, you don't have to sharpen that knife until it gets truly dull. And that might take a long time. Now I have had, not this one, I've had this one since October. I have not had to sharpen it at all. And I've been using it in all my bushcraft stuff. A really good quality knife, really well made, doesn't need to be sharpened that much. I have honed it. I carry my hone. And so should I be out at the doing bushcraft stuff, I carry one of those Viking stones. That's a hone. Say a polishing tool. And I will polish the edge so I don't have to take any metal off and resharpen it. Okay? What about a lesser quality blade or knife? It may require more honing and even more sharpening, because what you have to do, see, is you've had a fairly sharp edge. It's only when this tip wears off, it's become a little dull, that you have to resharpen and put the tip back on. See? So every time a knife gets to where it's not cutting like you want, you don't grab it and go to hogging off metal again, because you're wasting metal. It's not necessary. Simply honing it will help. Okay, I've honed this knife now for a couple of weeks now, Blackie, and it's getting where honing doesn't seem to help. Now, when it doesn't seem to help, that's when you go back and you do 10 strokes to expose some more fresh material, see, for the hone to work with. So the proper order of operations is sharpen the knife, get it where you want it. Hone it every time it starts to get a little bit dull. When it won't hone anymore, take 10 strokes either way to add a little bit more sharp. Hone that a couple times and see if it's back to sharp. You'll be a lot better off. That's how I'm able to maintain my knives in the field with just that small little Viking hone that I carry in my haversack. Because I realize I don't have to resharpen it. It just needs to be polished back up. See? And so that's how you keep a knife in the field. But what happens, Blackie, when I'm having to do this and I truly dulled my knife? It was something that was hard and I had to cut it, and for whatever reason it is now dull. Okay. You bring back out the sharpening stone and you do it again. You just start with a 10. It ain't sharp enough. Do another 10. Check it. Do another 10. Okay, now it's sharp enough. Go to hone. I hone it. I'm back in business, see. That is your order of operations of how to sharpen and maintain a blade in the field. To recap, you figure out what the bevel is on your knife by laying it up onto the sharpening stone and tipping it down until just the edge, that actual bevel edge, is on the stone. Okay? You will do 10 full length strokes, taking your time, never get in a hurry. Lubrication, rock and stuff like that will require that you put oil on them or water. The diamond hones do not, but I recommend you wash your diamond hones. Since this can pop out, I take it to the sink and I'll actually wash it to get any of those fibers that are plugged up with the dust that comes off the blade. Will plug it up and it won't cut as well. So you have to maintain your rocks too. Do 10 strokes, just like I said, full length, doing the whole blade. Don't move up and down your elbow. Nice, even, full strokes. Do it slowly. Do it deliberately. Do it the same way every stroke. 2, 3, 4. Keep it even. Inspect it. Run your thumb up from the back. Do I feel a wiry edge? If I do, put that edge down and go toward it like you're cutting with it. And you'll roll that wiry edge off and get back to an even bevel. Okay? Once I get it as sharp as I want, now I hone it. I have honed it and it is now polished and I'm using it. While I'm using it, if I notice it's getting where it's not cutting as well as I want, stop, wipe the edge off, make sure it's clean, go over here and grab your hone and do a few strokes to hone it, polish it back up. go back to using it. When honing doesn't bring it back, then actually sharpen. That's how to do it. Keep it clean, keep it oiled up. If it's one that's a material that's going to rust, make sure it's oiled and it's well kept. You can put wax onto them to keep them from rusting in the field if it's that type of metal. If it's a stainless or something else, realize that you want to use diamond on stainless to add teeth to it. Okay? So if it's any kind of metal out there, voodoo steel, whatever, that's ridiculously priced, and some of the names I don't even try to keep up with them. But it's stainless, always use a diamond hone in order to put teeth on it. Okay? And finally, well, Blackie, I'm one of them people that just can't walk and chew gum at the same time. What should I do? Go look on Amazon, and there are knife sharpening tool sets. That is a thing that will clamp onto the knife itself, hold the knife in place, and then you have a guide rod that goes through a hole on a bracket so that you keep the same angle every time, and you can sharpen knives. Even Elmer Fudd Clumsy can sharpen a knife with those. Given focus on detail, go slow and be careful, and they can do a good job with it. That's what I recommend. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And please, down there in the comments, ask your questions. My videos are based on your questions. So if there's something you want to know, please ask. That's what I'm here for. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.